After 7 secret abortions during her final year at Oduwa University, Amahle found herself pregnant once more, the 8th time. This time, no matter what she swallowed, bitter roots, black tablets, even sneaky trips to shadowy clinics, the stubborn life inside her refused to leave. Her belly swelled like a calabash under the sun, and with it came creeping fear. But the true terror arrived on the day of birth. Amahle raced to the village hospital, her screams slicing through the heavy, dry air like a spear. Sweat flooded down her body like rivers during rainy season. Her chest heaved, her legs trembled. Nurses rolled her into the delivery hut where the lamps burned bright and sharp. Doctors gathered, frowning in deep concentration. "Push!" one shouted. Amahle pushed out, slipped a tiny baby. Then another and another and another. The midwives gasped. "Again," barked the doctor. "A 5th, a 6th. By the spirits," cried a nurse. 7, 8, 9. "Keep pushing," someone yelled. 10, 11. Amahle gave one final scream, raw and high like a wounded bird. Out came the 12th. The air quivered with the sound of newborn cries. Soft, piercing musical wails filling every corner of the room. 12 babies, squirming, reddish, alive. The doctor wiped his brow with trembling fingers. 12, he whispered. "You birthed 12 children." Amahle lifted her weary head, her eyes wide and glassy like the full harvest moon. "Lie, it must be a lie," she rasped. But there they were, 12 tiny beings, wrapped in white cloth, laid out like yams after harvest, some whimpering, some yawning, some squirming. Girls and boys mixed together like millet and groundnuts in a village basket. Amahle's lips shook, her arms hung heavy at her sides. She could not speak, she could not cry. A nurse bent close, voice gentle. "Madam, whom shall we call for the—" "Father?" Amahle only stared blankly at the cracked wall. Her mouth opened, but not a sound came out. Because how do you summon a father when you do not know who he is? The room throbbed with the heat of new life, but Amahle's heart felt colder than dry season nights. There they were, 12 crying, breathing gifts from the heavens, and yet she had no answer for their roots. In her 23 short years, Amahle had lived wild as a forest fire. Every weekend, parties booming, drums pounding, palm wine flowing, men, men, men. Some faces blurred in her memory like morning mist, names forgotten, stories lost. When the nurse asked again, Amahle just stared through her, through the walls, through time. The next day, after being discharged, Amahle sat stiffly on her bed, her hair tangled like a bird's nest, her eyes hollow like old wells. She stared at the babies. She stared again. The weight inside her chest was unbearable. "I cannot," she whispered, her voice dry and brittle as dead leaves. "I cannot keep them." By the window stood Zola, Amahle's childhood friend, cradling one of the sleeping infants. "But Amahle, they are your blood," Zola pleaded. "They need you." Amahle shook her head fiercely. "No," she muttered. "I will get rid of them, one after the other. I need my life back. I want my freedom. I want to sleep. I want to dance again." Zola moved closer, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Please, at least keep one, even one." Amahle turned her face away. "And feed them with what? I cry with them every night? Buy milk with what money?" Her voice cracked under the weight of despair. Zola's tears spilled freely. "Amahle, these children are not curses. They are blessings. You don't know what tomorrow holds." Amahle scoffed, bitterly. "Blessings," she hissed. "Who asked for blessings?" She looked again at the tiny bundles, lying side by side like handmade dolls on a market mat. Some yawned. One boy sucked his thumb, smacking small noises into the night air. So tiny, so helpless. Yet Amahle's heart remained a locked drum, no rhythm of love inside. That night, under a sagging silver moon, when the babies slept like whispers, Amahle sat and scribbled a list, names of the men she had known or half known. Some she remembered clearly, some she guessed wildly, some she couldn't even spell fully. She folded the stained paper and tucked it into her old purse. Tomorrow would be the beginning. She would take them away, one by one, and never turn her eyes back. Before dawn cracked the sky open, Amahle dressed two of the infants, a boy and a girl, bathing them gently, smoothing fresh wrappers around. Their tiny bodies, their little fists waved as if in farewell. Zola watched silently from the doorframe. "Amahle, don't," she begged, voice like a broken drum. Amahle didn't answer. Her gaze was sharp, her soul carved hard like rock. She boarded a rickety taxi, bound for the town market. The streets pulsed with life, vendors shouting, goats bleating, metal clanging, but Amahle walked through it like a spirit. She reached a faded black gate and knocked thrice. The door creaked open. There stood a man, tall, dark-skinned, bewildered. She remembered him, a wild night at a seedy lodge. His face, familiar but distant, and so it began. She squinted at the man standing in the doorway. His face was familiar, but the name had slipped from her memory like water from cupped hands. The man blinked in confusion. "You again? What do you want?" Amahle did not smile. Instead, she lifted the bundles in her arms. "They are yours," she said, voice firm. The man chuckled, a harsh, nervous sound. "Mine? From where? What nonsense are you speaking?" Amahle stepped closer. "We met that night at the festival, remember? I became pregnant. These are your twins." The man scratched his head, bewildered. "Twins? From just one night?" "Yes," Amahle replied. "You can deny it, but look at them. They resemble you. If you wish, we can go for a spirit test. DNA." The man's mouth opened, then shut again. He stared at the babies. One of them sneezed softly, a tiny puff of sound. The man stepped backward, panic flickering in his eyes. "DNA," he muttered. "Wait, wait." He stood still for what felt like forever, battling inside himself. Fear, guilt, shame twisting through him like tangled roots. At last, he exhaled heavily. "Put them inside." Amahle nodded once. She stepped into the modest room, placed the babies carefully on the cracked leather couch, and turned to leave. "What if I cannot care for them?" The man called after her, voice cracking like dry wood. Amahle did not glance back. "That is no longer my concern," she said simply. "You are their father now." Without a word of farewell, no embrace, no soft goodbye, Amahle walked out into the bright morning. 2 babies gone. 10 remained. The following day, Amahle chose another baby, a plump boy with a sleepy gaze and round cheeks. She tied him snugly to her back with a colorful wrapper and made her way to the shining office of a wealthy merchant she once knew. Outside, his car gleamed proudly under the sun. Amahle knocked briskly at the grand door. The man stepped out, dressed in a sharp grey suit. "Yes, what are you doing here?" he demanded. Amahle untied the child from her back and placed him firmly into the man's arms. "This is your son," she said, "from that night at the Ocean Hotel. This is the fruit." The man jumped as though she had slapped him. "Me? Never! Are you mad?" he barked. "It is your child," Amahle said calmly. "Deny if you wish, but remember, the ancestors see all things." The man's proud face changed. He glanced nervously up and down the street, over his shoulder. "Lower your voice," he hissed. "I have not come to shout," Amahle replied, "only to give you what is yours." The baby sneezed again, a tiny, pitiful sound. The man's eyes darted back and forth like a trapped animal. "I am married," he whispered, fiercely. "Do not bring calamity to my doorstep." Amahle pointed at the child. "Look closely. The nose, the lips, your mirror image." "I do not want this," the man spat. Before Amahle could say another word, he slammed the heavy door shut. She stood there silently for a moment, Then, without hesitation, she bent down and placed the baby gently by the gate. She turned and walked, away without a backward glance. Later that same afternoon, Amahle cradled another infant, a delicate girl, and travelled to a dusty room in Yaruma where a struggling musician lived. He opened the door shirtless, a battered guitar hanging from his shoulder. "Ah, Amahle, long time," he greeted warmly. Amahle handed him the baby without ceremony. "This is yours." The musician dropped his guitar with a loud clatter. "Amahle, fear the spirits. What are you saying?" She did not blink. "Your daughter. Take her." The musician clutched his head, pacing in circles, but it was only once. "I do not care," Amahle said coldly. "She is yours now." He shouted, he pleaded, he cursed the winds. But Amahle placed the child gently on the couch and walked away, never once looking back. He did not chase her. Day by day, like a silent merchant peddling sorrow, Amahle carried the rest of her children to different men, one to a nightclub bouncer who had once paid her taxi fare, one to an old lecturer from her days at the university who never returned her calls, one to a hotel porter who reeked of cigars and broken promises. Some men looked into the baby's faces, grew pale and quietly accepted them. Others raged, throwing stones at her retreating figure. One even called the town guards, and Amahle ran like a startled antelope through the dusty streets. But she did not stop. Her heart was locked tighter than a chief's treasure chest. Her mind had become stone. By the end of the week, all 12 babies were gone. Amahle's small room sat in complete silence. No soft cries, no milk bottles rolling under the bed, no dirty cloths piled in corners. She stretched out on her thin mat, arms wide, and smiled a brittle smile. "My body is free," she whispered into the dark. She believed her story had ended, but tales born from such roots never end easily. Once Amahle had been pure, a flower untouched by the world's storms. In truth, she had been a virgin until her final year at Ikonda University. She was raised in a household soaked with faith. Morning prayers were not optional. Skirts always touched the ankles. Even the whisper of romance was seen as a path to ruin. Her father's voice rumbled like the rainy season thunder. Her mother lived with prayer beads never far from her fingers, morning, noon, and night. No lipstick, no sweethearts, no careless words. Amahle grew up in a house where silence was a language and sin was hunted like a criminal. When her acceptance letter arrived, the entire compound erupted with joy. Her mother danced barefoot on the dusty yard. "My daughter will shine brighter than the morning star," she cried. Her father simply nodded, deep and proud. "Remember who you are," he said. At first, Amahle didn't forget. She had joined the fellowship group at her university. She turned down the offers to party when her roommates invited her to the clubs. "No, thank you," she would say, and when the boys called her fine girl, she would look the other way. But like so many others, the world of school began to change her. From the moment she got into Ekwueme University, things were hard. Her parents could barely afford to send money. Some semesters, she survived on snacks and the occasional meal from generous friends. She wore the same shoes every day, and some nights hunger pressed against her stomach, gnawing at her insides. Her roommates, on the other hand, seemed to live in a different world. They changed their wigs every week. They had new phones, wore new clothes, and ate fried rice and chicken like it was air. At first, Amahle resisted their way of life. She often said, "God will provide," to which they laughed, "God helps those who help themselves." But she held on until the final year broke her completely. She needed money for her final year project. The department had set a deadline, and students rushed to complete theirs. She called home, sent messages, even begged her pastor to speak to her parents. But no reply came. Her mother was sick, her father struggling, and there was no one else to turn to. Then her friends introduced her to a man. Chief Olamide, a wealthy businessman who sometimes helped female students with their expenses. "He can take care of everything," they said. "All you need is to meet him." Out of desperation, Amahle agreed. The man was smooth, well-dressed, with a black SUV that smelled of leather and power. He offered to cover all her expenses, from tuition to project costs and even extra allowances. But there was one condition: she had to sleep with him. "I'll give you everything you need," he promised, "but just one night, that's all I ask." Amahle's ears burned at the proposition. She stood up and ran out. Her feet carried her back to the hostel, where she collapsed on her bed and wept. She told her roommates she couldn't trade her dignity for money. That evening, as her roommates laughed and painted their nails, one of them looked up and said, "Amahle, just go and meet the man. He won't hurt you. He'll give you what you need." Amahle shook her head. "I don't want to lose my dignity." Her roommates laughed. "What's dignity when you have nothing to eat?" Days passed, and the project deadline grew closer. Amahle watched as her classmates handed in their work, while she struggled to even print her proposal. She begged her supervisor for more time, but he replied coldly, showing no sympathy. Desperate and ashamed, Amahle thought back to the businessman in the black SUV. She remembered the soft smile, the gentle voice, and the power that surrounded him. She had met him once at a party. He had offered his number through her roommate. The next morning, she called him. He answered immediately, his voice warm. "You came back," he said. Amahle stood still, her hands trembling. He poured her a drink. "Relax," he said softly. "Just one night. After that, all your problems will disappear." She turned to leave, but then she remembered her project. She remembered her mother's cough, the snacks that had run out, and her empty pockets. She turned back. That evening, Amahle gave him her body. She closed her eyes, held her breath, and told herself, "Just this once, and everything will be better." The next day, he gave her money, more than enough to cover her project expenses. She printed it, bound it, and submitted it on time. She smiled when her classmates clapped for her. "Thank you," she said, but deep inside her something had broken. That broken piece never healed. After that first night, Amahle began to change. The line she swore she would never cross had already been left far behind. Each step forward became easier. It started small, just with the businessman. He called again, and she went. Then another man, and then another. Soon she no longer cried. She began to smile after each visit. Her purse was full, her wardrobe expanded, and her phone became the latest model. Her classmates started to notice. "Amahle, you're glowing," they said. She laughed and replied, "It's God's grace." But it was not grace. It was the dark, hidden money of powerful men. Amahle slept with rich men, old men with potbellies and full pockets. She slept with lecturers, trading her body for good grades. She slept with classmates, the smart ones, who helped her with assignments as they lay on their beds. Her body became a marketplace with no rules, no boundaries. Amahle didn't care. Her conscience was asleep, her heart was cold, and her eyes were dry. Protection. She didn't think about it. Sometimes they used it, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes she forgot to ask. Sometimes they didn't even offer. Her encounters were unplanned, reckless even. Sometimes it happened in a lecturer's office, other times in a parked car behind the lecture hall, or even a one-night stand at a club. Protection was rarely considered. Pregnancy, however, became a recurring issue. The first time it happened, Amahle cried, devastated, thinking it was the end of her carefree life. The second time, there were no tears. By the third time, she already knew which nurse to visit. She would swallow pills or lie down on cold, unforgiving metal beds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Amahle removed them 7 times. Each time she walked away, strong. No fear, no guilt, just freedom. But then came the 8th. She felt the signs, as she always did. She took the pills. Nothing happened. She boiled roots, drank it all. Nothing moved. She went to the back door of the nurse's clinic. The tools touched her, but the baby stayed. The more she tried, the stronger. It held on. And when the time finally came, it didn't come alone. It came with 11 others, 12 babies, from one stubborn pregnancy, 12, like judgment, like payback, forcefully given to different fathers, like Valentine packages passed around. One by one, time passed and Amahle continued her life as though nothing had happened. She buried the memory of the 12 babies deep within her heart. The past was buried, and she embraced the present, the freedom of her body. Her friends, however, began to marry, starting families of their own. Amahle would laugh and say, "When it's time, I'll give birth. I can't let one child tie me down from living my best life. If I can have 12, what's 2 or 3? When I'm ready, I will have them." After graduation the following year, Amahle decided it was time to leave her reckless lifestyle behind. She wanted stability. She wanted to settle down, but only with someone wealthy. Eventually, she married Chief Olamide, a rich businessman, as his third wife. The wedding was grand, filled with music, decorations, and all the showmanship that money could buy. But after the celebration there was silence. 1 year passed, no child. 2 years passed, still nothing. The first wife whispered, "Maybe she's just enjoying herself." The second wife laughed, "Maybe her womb is just sleeping." But Chief Olamide was not smiling. He called her one night. "Let's see a doctor," he said. Amahle's heart jumped, her hands shook. "No," she said quickly, "I'm fine. Just wait a little longer. God's time is best." But deep inside, fear had a grip on her throat. She knew what she had done. What she had removed, what she had destroyed. She avoided the doctor like a snake avoids fire. 3 years passed, 4 years, 5. Then, one morning, Chief Olamide called her into the living room. His eyes were cold. "You may leave now," he said. "You brought me beauty, but no child. I didn't marry for decoration." He handed her a brown envelope with divorce papers inside. Amahle packed her things. This time there was no music following, her only silence, but she didn't give up. "It was just one mistake," she told herself. "I will try again." And she did. She met Senator Osagi, a charismatic politician full of charm and ambition. His face was always on posters, his voice loud like the radio. He liked how she looked, how she walked, how she smiled. They got married. Another big wedding. More rice, more music, more dancing, but again, no child. Months passed, then a year, then 2. Amahle's mother frowned more each day. "Are you sure you're okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," Amahle said, but her heart was far from fine. By the 3rd year, Senator Osagi had had enough. He stood by the door one evening and said, "Go. I need a woman, not a statue." He didn't shout. He didn't beg. He simply ended it. Amahle packed her bags once again. Tears came, but they didn't fall. And then came the 3rd. Mr. Ease, a contractor, a simple man with a big house and an even bigger heart. He treated her like a queen, took her shopping, took her traveling, called her his sunshine. For the first time in years, Amahle felt peace, but soon the same question came. Where is the child? Days turned into seasons. No pregnancy, no baby, no hope. People began to whisper, "She's barren. She's wasted her womb. She was once wild, but now she's empty." Amahle pretended not to hear, but every night she stared at the ceiling, her thoughts heavy. When she turned 45, something shifted inside her. Her body grew quiet, too quiet. Month after month she waited for her flow to come, but nothing came. The blood had stopped, just like that. One day she sat on the toilet and whispered to herself, "It's over. No more moon. No more chance." Menopause had come, like a silent thief in the night, stealing her ability to give life. And in that moment, she finally understood the cost of the choices she had made. The freedom she had longed for had come with a heavy price. Her face, once bright and shining, now looked tired. Her skin had lost its glow, and her hips no longer swayed the way they used to. Men who once chased after her now looked past her, as though she was invisible, like air. One day, she wore her best dress and walked into a party. Nobody turned, nobody stared. She sat alone in a corner, holding her purse like a baby. Her phone didn't ring like before. Her inbox stayed empty. The world had moved on. Her parents were gone now, buried in silence. She didn't visit their graves. She had been too busy when they were alive. Now the silence they left behind was louder than any music she'd ever known. Her friends had children, tall sons, pretty daughters. They sent her pictures of graduations, birthdays, and weddings. She would reply with a thumbs up and fake smiles. Sometimes late at night, she would stand by the window, watching other women call their children in from the rain. She would press her hand to her chest and whisper, "Once upon a time I had 12, but there was nobody in the house. No small shoes on the floor, no toys in the corner. Only her. Only silence." Regret slowly crept into her room like a lizard, sitting on her shoulder and biting her little by little. She tried to chase it away, but it wouldn't leave. Because when the moon stops shining, you cannot call it back, and when the womb sleeps forever, no seed can grow again. On her 50th birthday, Amahle sat on her bed, her hands on her knees. Her heart felt heavy, like wet cloth. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She looked around her empty house. No child, no husband, no cake, no voice saying, "Happy birthday, Mama," she whispered. "I was once a mother. I had 12. Her voice shook like dry leaves in the wind. Then she stood up. "Let me try," she said. "Let me find them. Maybe one will remember me." She patted her small back, put on her scarf, and stepped out of the house. Her legs were slow, but her hope was fast. She started with the man from the town's market, the one who had taken the twins. His house was bigger now, his gate taller. She knocked, and the man came out. He stared at her, and she said softly, "It's me. I came for the twins, my children." The man's face turned cold. "What are you talking about?" he said. "I gave them to you," she repeated. "Please, let me see them." The man looked away. "Those boys are mine now. They don't know. You, get out before I call the police." He slammed the gate shut, and Amahle stood there, feeling the wind blow her scarf to the ground. She picked it up, her hands trembling, and moved on. At the second house, the struggling musician. His room was still the same, but when he saw her, his face frowned. "Ah, you," she smiled weakly. "Please, the girl I left with you, where is she?" He rubbed his chin and said, "I gave her to my sister in Benin. She doesn't bear my name. She doesn't even know I once held her." Amahle opened her mouth, but no words came out. He shook his head and walked away. The third house belonged to the businessman who once slammed the door on her. Now he was a devout church deacon, and his Bible was bigger than before. She waited until he stepped out from evening service. "Sir," she said, "do you remember me?" He looked at her, pretending not to. "I gave you a baby," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "Please, I just want to see her." He took a deep breath. "That child was taken to an orphanage. I never saw her again. Don't come here again. I'm a changed man." Then he walked away, his Bible under his arm, like nothing had ever happened. 3 houses, 3 doors closed, 3 pieces of her heart shattered. Amahle sat on a stone, by the roadside, wiping her eyes, but the tears wouldn't stop. She went from house to house, face to face, street to street, but every door she knocked on answered with pain. Nobody said, "Welcome." Nobody said, "Mother." Only silence, only rejection. The years had stolen so much from her, her children, her joy, her sense of self. But what was left now? She had spent her life running, searching for answers in the wrong places, feeding on broken promises. The regret was relentless, the silence deafening. And as she sat there under the fading light, she realized that she would never get back what was lost. But in the depth of her sorrow, Amahle finally understood. Life wasn't about the things you had or lost, but about the lessons you learned along the way, and at that moment a silent peace embraced her broken heart. The path she had taken may have been steep, but it had led her here, to a place of acceptance. Some shouted, some chased her, some looked at her like she was a stranger. Her legs grew weak, her voice became dry, her heart was breaking like clay. On cement, she sat alone in a park, watching children run and laugh. One girl passed by, holding her mother's hand. Bella closed her eyes for a moment. She imagined that girl was hers. For a brief second, a smile tugged at her lips. Then her phone rang. The screen showed a strange number. Her hand shook as she answered. "Hello," she said, her voice barely a whisper. A weak voice replied, "Bella?" Her heart skipped a beat. "This is your former lecturer, remember me?" Bella nodded slowly, tears rising again. "Yes, sir." "I don't have long," he continued. "I'm sick, lying on my bed. But before I leave this world, I must tell you the truth." Bella's heart raced. "What truth?" she asked. "The child you left with me. She's still here. Her name is Tiny. She grew up well. She's in school now, but she doesn't know who she really is." Bella stood up from the bench. "Come," the old man said, his voice trembling. "Come before I go. She deserves to know you. She deserves to know her mother." For the first time in years, Bella's heart beat with hope. Just a small light, like a candle in a dark room. She packed her things that evening, tied her scarf, held her bag tight, and whispered to herself, "Maybe, just maybe, one child will remember me." With tears in her eyes and trembling hands, she set out to meet her only daughter, Tenny, the one left behind, the one who still had her name hidden in her blood. Bella woke early the next morning. She didn't eat. She didn't drink. She only folded her clothes, packed her bag, and stepped out with quiet feet. The sky was grey, the wind slow, and the road ahead looked long. She whispered, "I'm coming, Tiny. Just wait." At the park, she entered a bus heading to the small town where her old lecturer lived. Her heart beat slowly. Her eyes stared out the window, watching every tree they passed, every market, every hill. Bella counted them in her mind, imagining the moment Tenny would stand in the doorway, Tenny asking, "Are you my mother?" And Bella, with open arms, would say, "Yes, my child." She smiled for the first time in many years. Her smile was soft but full of longing. Halfway through the journey, the sky turned dark. Rain began to fall. The bus sped down a narrow hill, a loud horn, a scream, a flash, a crash. The world turned to chaos. Metal bent, glass shattered, voices cried, and then silence. And there, among the broken seeds and bleeding hands, Bella lay still. Her eyes were closed, her lips were quiet. She never reached the town. She never saw Tenny. She never heard her daughter's voice. She never held a child again. Just like that, the woman who once gave birth to 12 babies died alone. No goodbye. No one to weep over her body. No child to say, "She was my mother." Only a name tag in her bag and a heart full of regrets. She never got the chance to meet any of the children she once gave away. She never had the chance to correct her mistakes. Moral of the story: be careful how you use your youth, for the time will come when the mistakes of the past catch up with you. Not everyone gets the chance to make things right. Not everyone gets to hold the ones they love again.